here it was again, this time accepted by Rice. What the ministers actually decided was unclear, since Lavrov said he had no intention of agreeing to either a Chapter 7 resolution or sanctions. Of course, given that position, there was little chance that the sticks would contain Council sanctions, or at least not effective ones. It also meant negotiations on the Chapter 7 resolution would come to a complete halt, which they did. With the EU3 rushing back to the negotiating table, there was no way Russia or China would allow negotiations on a Security Council resolution to proceed. I was sick about the implications of this deal, which delayed our mandatory resolution for the rest of May, all of June, and almost all of July, and with the text ultimately adopted as Resolution 1696 being substantially weaker than the one we had been drafting in early May. This was the first time I thought seriously about not staying on as the UN ambassador past the end of my recess appointment. So distressed was I about the minister's deal. I was floored by how indifferent Rice was to the potential consequences of what she had agreed to. Worse, she said the Iranians must understand that we're really prepared to isolate them through sanctions, which was in fact the precise opposite of what we were doing. The action shifted to the Perm 5 plus Germany political directors as they put together a package which was predictably very heavy on carrots and very light on sticks. I was happy to be out of it, but I knew we would inevitably be back at the Council after Iran, yet again, refused to give up uranium enrichment. Nonetheless, there was little I could do until the carrot effort crashed once more. The worst news came on Tuesday, May 30th, 2006, when I learned of the decision that the United States would actually join in direct talks, along with the EU3, Russia, and China, if Iran were to agree to suspend enrichment. Rice scheduled a dinner in Washington at the Watergate's Aquarelle restaurant with Steve Hadley, Nick Burns, Bob Joseph, and me to tell us this, or at least to tell me. Rice saw that the EU3 effort was near collapse, and she reasoned that we had to intervene to save it, exactly as at the start of the second term when she shifted policy. Of course, what we should have done was watch the EU3 effort slide beneath the waves and then get on with serious efforts to stop Iran's nuclear weapons program. In response, for my appetizer, I ordered carrot soup. Only Joseph noticed, suppressing a chortle. The dinner ended at about 8:40 p.m. The carrot soup did not cheer me up. The crab cakes I ordered made me feel better. In press interviews the next day, particularly a live appearance on Neil Cavuto's show on Fox News, I gritted my teeth to try to defend Rice's announcement without hopelessly compromising myself. I noted that we still had red lines, such as the requirement that Iran suspend enrichment before we would meet with them, and that they didn't have forever to respond. Bush had said to Rice, "Don't make me look weak." Of course, that is exactly what I thought this announcement did. I suspected Bush knew it too. The Perm 5 plus Germany foreign ministers met in Vienna on June 1st and agreed on the carrot recipe for Iran, but said only that if Iran rejected it, further steps would have to be taken in the Security Council, which was so vague it was no surprise even Lavrov could agree to it. The New York Times characterized it the next day as, quote, package of terms, no sanctions included, for Iran, close quote. On Monday, July 24th, the Perm 3, the U.S., UK, and France, met with Germany's new Perm rep, Thomas Matusak. It was clear to me that neither Jones Perry nor de La Sablière any longer cared what the draft text said, and I didn't really either, so long as it had a clear deadline, no later than August 31st. If we could at least get that, we had one more chance to make a stand in the Council, and if we failed, no one could say we hadn't tried. With that, on July 31st, by a vote of 14-1, we adopted Resolution 1696, with Qatar voting no because they wanted to wait until Iranian President Ahmadinejad's August 22nd deadline before doing anything. At least we hadn't succumbed to that humiliation. Of course, Ahmadinejad followed his own schedule in any event and responded to the EU3 offer on August the 22nd, as he always said he would. He was nearly incoherent, but the bottom line was clear. Iran was not suspending its enrichment activities. Burns, as usual, doubtless reflecting Soare's views, said this might not actually be a complete response. Fortunately, Bush took a hard line at a press conference that morning. However, Rice was watering down our draft sanctions resolution on such subjects as international credit and air travel. Rice's wobbliness, even before we circulated a draft text to the EU3, let alone Russia and China, was worrisome. Astonishingly, on August the 22nd, we issued no statement on Ahmadinejad's response, and Crouch told me early on August 23rd that Bush and Rice were meeting at 8:55 a.m. on what to say. The final statement was a muddle, a sharp contrast to Bush's remarks at his August 22nd press conference. Rice called it around 7 p.m. to say that the EU's Javier Solana would be having more meetings with Iran in the next few days, which could be important in convincing the EU that Iran wasn't going to give in and suspend its uranium enrichment. I thought exactly the opposite, namely that it would impel the Euroroids onto more negotiation and less work on the sanctions resolution. On Friday, August 25th, Solana said publicly that he had already spoken twice with Ali Larijani, head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, since Ahmadinejad's response, and they would talk further in Brussels on August 31st. The consequence of these delays was not only that we were stalled on a sanctions resolution, but that Iran's work on its nuclear program continued while we fiddled. Proving the point, on August 26th, Ahmadinejad formally opened the Arak heavy water production facility. Proving the point further, Larijani postponed his meeting with Solana until September 6th in Berlin, a venue he probably thought more congenial than Brussels. 2 weeks after our deadline and several months after what should have been the real deadline, we were still spinning wheels. Rice, in New York for the General Assembly opening, had dinner with Solana on Sunday, September 17th, arguing that Iran was stalling, a point she also made the next day in her meeting with Chinese Foreign Minister Li Zhaojing, concluding, if Javier Solana can't produce something this week, we should move ahead with sanctions. Solana ultimately had to tell the Perm 5 foreign ministers on Monday, October 2nd, that his meetings with Larijani had gone nowhere. Lavrov, however, still insisted that sanctions were premature. The EU3 circulated their own draft sanctions resolution on October 17th. Their text was, of course, weaker than what we had been working on. NSC's J.D. Crouch said he had asked Nick Burns, when John praises this resolution to the press, what is his answer to the question, what current nuclear activity will this resolution stop? If the answer is nothing, don't we have a problem? This was an excellent question. Burns had no answer, in part because the question didn't matter to the EU3, or, therefore, to Burns. When the EU3 circulated their weaker draft, it finally caused Rice to explode. Kristen Silverberg, Assistant Secretary for International Organization Affairs, said to me, "She's never talked to me like that in all 7 years I've known her." As it turned out, Rice was angry because she did not know the state of play on the negotiations. Burns was out of the country, and Silverberg took the hit. I was also sure that Rice would not like the Wall Street Journal editorial entitled Secretary of State El Barading. In our October 26th Perm 5 plus Germany meeting, Russian Perm Rep Churkin gave his general and preliminary reactions to the agreement. In his 20-minute speech, Churkin basically trashed the entire EU3 draft resolution, saying expressly it did not represent what ministers and political directors had agreed, didn't include any of Russia's suggestions, and would only back Iran into a corner. The Chinese deputy Perm Rep basically agreed, although mercifully, he was brief. After such a productive session, the Perm 5 plus Germany Perm Reps did not meet again until Friday, November 3rd. Churkin and Wang hadn't moved an inch. On Tuesday, November 7th, we met at the French mission, no more productively than the last meetings. Given our election results, it was clear to me that things were only going to get worse, as Russia took heart from the Republican loss of control of the House and Senate. After over an hour, literally no one had anything to say, and the meeting ended. On and on the Perm 5 plus Germany meetings went. On November 9th and 13th, we made little progress, with both the EU3 and Russia agreeing that political directors should speak again by phone to see if they could resolve these differences. Ahmadinejad announced on November 14th that Iran was planning to install 60,000 centrifuges at Natanz, and that the world was prepared to accept Iran as a nuclear power. Burns called at about 7:10 p.m. to report that the political directors' conference call had not been successful, and that he and Russian Sergei Kislyak had almost gotten into a brawl over the phone. On November the 15th, we had our 6th Perm 5 plus Germany meeting of this series, at which it rapidly became evident that we weren't going anywhere. I suggested, as I had to Burns, that we refer all of this back to foreign ministers. Of course, the other possibility was to force a resolution to a vote and see what Russia would do in the crunch. But the EU3, Britain, France, and Germany, were still nowhere near ready for that. On December 6th in Paris, Perm 5 plus Germany political directors met again, looking to give Russia almost anything in order to get a resolution. By this time, my imminent departure was public, and Bob Joseph had told Rice that he was leaving the administration no later than February. The only hope now is that if the Security Council can impose some sanctions, no matter how weak and ineffective, Iran would freak out, perhaps withdrawing from the NPT or expelling IAEA inspectors, and we could once and for all expose what they were up to. Given how watered down the draft resolution now was, however, it looked increasingly as if Iran would simply live with it. On December 11th, Ahmadinejad opened a conference in Tehran to discuss whether there had been a Holocaust in Europe during World War II, promising a reasoned debate on both sides. By late December, staffers from the EU3 missions in New York were complaining how badly things were going as the draft resolution continued to weaken. The Wall Street Journal correctly editorialized that a weak resolution might be worse than no resolution at all, but resolution there would no doubt be. It finally came on Saturday, December 23rd, with the unanimous adoption of Resolution 1737. One last time, we never fail in New York. The entire EU3 effort was premised on the view that they could handle an axis of evil member better than we had handled Iraq, and that Iran could be talked out of pursuing nuclear weapons. Our support for the EU3 thus perversely enabled their effort to make us look bad, with the far more dangerous consequence that Iran gained almost 4 years of additional time to perfect an indigenous capacity throughout the entire nuclear fuel cycle, leaving us all in a far more vulnerable position than when we started. Israel's ambassador Dan Gillerman once described the state of play quite well in a speech to the Security Council, saying that Ahmadinejad was denying the existence of the Holocaust even while preparing the next one. The fact is that Iran will never voluntarily give up its nuclear program, and a policy based on the contrary assumption is just not delusional but dangerous. This is the road to the nuclear holocaust.
This is the policy that Ronald Reagan used with the Soviet Union. The evil empire.
That's the policy he used with the... Really? When he threatened them, when they decided to... When they were threatening Poland, was that calm diplomacy? When he basically put World War III on the line and said, if you invade Poland, I'm starting World War III. Was that calm diplomacy? Or was that strong-arm tactics? What about when he armed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan against the Soviets? Was that diplomacy? Tell me!
The world is full of peril as well as promise. Too many of its people, even now, live in the shadow of want and tyranny. As I speak to you tonight, the fate of a proud and ancient nation hangs in the balance. For 1,000 years, Christmas has been celebrated in Poland, a land of deep religious faith. But this Christmas brings little joy to the courageous Polish people. They have been betrayed by their own government. The men who rule them and their totalitarian allies fear the very freedom that the Polish people cherish. They have answered the stirrings of liberty with brute force, killings, mass arrests, and the setting up of concentration camps. Lech Walesa and other Solidarity leaders are imprisoned, their fate unknown. Factories, mines, universities, and homes have been assaulted. The Polish government has trampled underfoot solemn commitments to the UN Charter and the Helsinki Accords. It has even broken the Gdansk Agreement of August 1980,